65% of Steam Deck gamers said that they feel limited by the Steam Deck's performance. 70% said that they don't look at a game's verified status at all, and over a third of people using the Steam Deck are primarily playing AAA games. These results are all courtesy of a Steam Deck survey conducted by the good folks at Overkill.wtf. There's a link to the article with the results in the description, so definitely head over there and look at these numbers for yourself. I found some of the details fascinating, so I thought it would be really good to talk about these results with you all. This is all particularly fascinating because we are seemingly very close to a new Steam Deck revision coming soon. It's unclear if this will be a silent revision like they've done up until now, or more like a mid-gen refresh like the slimmed down PS5 or the Switch OLED. There's a chance they may even offer an alternate color like a white Steam Deck or the Portal themed Steam Deck we got a glimpse of before launch. We do know two things though. There will be upgraded Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, but the performance likely won't improve since Valve has said several times that they see the current performance target for the Steam Deck as stable for at least the next couple of years. To many of the respondents of this survey, that may be a little disappointing considering the majority have said that they consider themselves at least a little bit limited by the performance of the Steam Deck. Strictly speaking, we can technically point the finger at poor optimization or games being rushed to release. As an example, Baldur's Gate 3 had notoriously bad performance in the third act, and this is across the board on any PC you may have. So even if you had a fine experience in the first 40 hours of the game, you may have experienced a point in that game where you hit a wall and then the performance tanked. Like I said, this is a problem for all PCs, but it's something that may be more pronounced on a PC handheld like the Steam Deck, where the game goes from being 30 FPS and playable to under 20 FPS and for many unacceptable. Likewise, Starfield is another game which has been criticized for its optimization or lack thereof, and again the problem is emphasized on the Steam Deck because you literally do go from 30 FPS and playable to under 15 FPS and unacceptable in a matter of minutes. Areas with less geometry like tight quarters play great, but open cities can dip into the low teens even with the dynamic resolution scaling down to potato levels. Naturally, mods have helped to alleviate this issue since launch, but it seems like experiences like these could be shaping the opinion that the Steam Deck is currently limited by its power. But although there are games like Starfield and Baldur's Gate which have had maybe less than ideal performance on the Steam Deck, there are still other games like Lies of P, Armored Core 6, and the latest expansion to Cyberpunk 2077, Phantom Liberty. These games show that when they're well optimized, you can still have good looking tech and play well on the Steam Deck and open yourself up to a larger audience. And personally, this doesn't impact me too much. I think of the Steam Deck as more of a console than a PC. Valve themselves have stated that the goal of the Steam Deck was to consoleize the PC experience so that it's more streamlined for users that are used to consoles. In that way, I don't think the Steam Deck has to be able to play every new game well, but I do think it has to be clear about what games it does play well and what games it doesn't. And in addition to thinking of the Steam Deck as a console, I have another handheld that's been taking more and more of my time in the One X Fly. I do prefer SteamOS and trackpads, and so I do miss those things when I'm using the One X Fly, but it does mean that I haven't had to worry about performance as much. So of course the beauty of PC is that you have options even with handhelds like the ROG Ally and the upcoming Lenovo Legion Go. I think Valve welcomes those handhelds and doesn't see them as a reason to rush to make the Steam Deck 2. So aside from performance, there's a lot more interesting stuff in this survey, so let me tell you how they gathered data to at least contextualize this a little bit. This is a survey that ran from September 5th to September 20th. It was a questionnaire that consisted of about 50 questions and it was all about the Steam Deck. Over 3,000 people participated. It was 3,150 to be exact. The overall satisfaction with the Steam Deck was an 8.94 out of 10, so really, really good. 48% of participants were in North America, 41% in Europe, and then just the remaining people were scattered all over the world. The bulk of people responding were between the ages of 18 and 39. That makes up 41%, and most of the respondents came via the Steam Deck subreddit. So I did share this survey during this time, so some of you may have responded as well, but I think the source for many folks came from the Steam Deck subreddit, and in that way there is a bit of self-selection here, a good bit of self-selection actually, right? And it means that the respondents, just as Overkill.wtf put it, are highly interested in the Steam Deck platform and its success, and furthermore they are more likely to be favorable towards the device price when compared to a random sample, like asking folks on the street. So the first question covered was whether or not people own a Steam Deck. 95% of the people that responded did own a Steam Deck. There were 83 individuals, so around 3% that owned multiple decks. That I'm one of them, right? And then there are people that don't own a Steam Deck, so that was about 5% of the respondents, which is pretty high. You know, I'm always surprised and fascinated by people that watch my channel and don't have a Steam Deck. I've received that comment before where they say they don't have a Steam Deck, but they enjoy watching my videos. And that really feels like the highest compliment I can get, that you really enjoy watching my videos, even though you don't own a Steam Deck, when primarily, of course, what I cover is the Steam Deck. So that's really cool. I really appreciate that. In any case, likewise here, there are 5% of people that don't own a Steam Deck but did respond to this survey. Presumably they are on the Steam Deck subreddit, saw the survey, and participated. That said, the number one reason they gave for not owning a Steam Deck was the price. So yeah, the main reason to not own a Steam Deck is just you can't afford it right now. That makes sense. There were also some folks that said they don't own a Steam Deck because they're not keen on first generation products. Some others said they prefer other handhelds. Some others still said performance, so that goes back to the previous discussion. There are some that say they ordered the Steam Deck, it just hasn't arrived yet. Hopefully you've gotten it by now. And then just a few people, maybe one or two people, it looks like, said that they don't own a Steam Deck primarily because it runs on Linux or because of quality issues. It is good to see that so few people use the reasoning that it runs on Linux as a reason to not own a Steam Deck. I have seen a few more comments ever since the Ally was released that SteamOS is actually holding the Steam Deck back. Obviously, I don't agree with that. I can understand the preference for Windows, especially if you're someone that plays online shooters, for example, or you really want to play games that are not on Steam, that sort of thing. I can definitely get that. But yeah, I can't agree with the premise that SteamOS is holding the Steam Deck back. I think that SteamOS is very clearly the unique selling proposition to the Steam Deck, and I genuinely believe that the Steam Deck wouldn't have sold nearly as much if it was just another Windows handheld. I'm glad Windows handhelds exist, but I'm also glad that the Steam Deck exists and that it has SteamOS, which is really tailored specifically to this gaming experience, and I really wouldn't have it any other way personally. All right, the next few questions are about storage, and these are my favorite for a few reasons, right? So Overkill.wtf did this same survey last year, and last year the 512GB Steam Deck was the most popular option, and this year that's flipped. Now the 64GB option is the most popular, with 37% of people owning the 64GB version. The 512 is right behind it with 36%, but as soon as you dig deeper, you can see sort of why the meta has shifted towards the 64GB version. Obviously that price is unbeatable, right? Like $399. So I think that as more casual consumers have been buying the Steam Deck, it makes sense to come in at that $399 price point. But more importantly, more than half of the respondents that bought a 64GB Steam Deck have replaced that drive. So out of approximately 1,100 people that bought the 64GB Steam Deck, 357 of them replaced it with a 1TB drive, another 200 replaced it with a 512GB drive, another 89 replaced it with a 256, and even 74 folks replaced it with a 2TB drive. So yeah, it seems like over 60% of the people that bought a 64GB version replaced their drive. I think that's really fascinating. So I kind of feel like the 64GB model is obsolete, and depending on how you look at this data either really confirms what I'm saying or really goes against the face of what I'm saying. So on the one hand, the 64GB model is the most popular version, so a lot of people are buying it, so it can't be obsolete, right? But on the other hand, those that are buying it are by and large changing the storage to a bigger version. So absolutely the $399 price point is a necessity. But if Valve are to do a mid-gen refresh, I think it would be cool if they were able to make the 256 version available for $399 and move up from there, because really it does feel like the 64GB version only exists so that people can go ahead and upgrade that storage. Even if you didn't upgrade your SSD, of course, 85% of respondents did use a microSD card, 512GB being the most popular version, followed by 1TB, then 256, 128, 400GB, and then 2TB. I don't know where you're getting these 2TB cards from, but definitely send one over to me. Why not? But yeah, it feels like the 512 being the most popular is no surprise. I know a lot of people advocate for going with the 1TB so that you never run out of storage, but it does feel like the 512GB is the best bang for your buck, considering as of recording, you can get a really good one, the Samsung Evo, for $28. The next subject focused around issues with the Steam Deck. Apparently last year, there was a lot of outcry on the Steam Deck subreddit about different issues that early adopters were facing with the Steam Deck. And so Overkill asked the same question again, and 200 people said that they had to return their Steam Deck. But even with that inconvenience, they found Valve support to be on average 8.7 out of 10, which is really good. Overkill goes on to say that of the people that did have to return their Steam Deck, most issues were related to display, like stuck pixels and flickering. 37 of the 200 people had screen problems, 16 participants seemed to have issues with the fan, and 13 people had issues with the 400 MHz lock bug. Aside from issues and repairs, they also asked how many people modified their Steam Deck. Nearly 500 people modified it somehow, meaning even Steam Deck skins or backplates, or even people that reapplied thermal paste. Even more than skins, 900 people have cases on their Steam Deck. I bet a good amount of those are the kill switch, because that kill switch case is pretty dope. And over half of the respondents own a dedicated dock for their Steam Deck. That's pretty cool, and it definitely shows the influence of the Switch here, where you can have a hybrid that plays both handheld and docked. That's really awesome. So here's something interesting. Apparently the most popular genre to play on the Steam Deck is RPGs, and that shouldn't be too surprising perhaps, especially if you look at the most popular games every month. In fact, Overkill did the same thing, and they have the most popular games for the year according to the survey. Number 1 is Vampire Survivors, number 2 is Elden Ring, which moved up actually since last year. Number 3 is Baldur's Gate, number 4 is Hades, that also moved up. Number 5 is Dave the Diver, number 6 is Stardew Valley, which also moved up, and then number 7 is Cyberpunk 2077, 8 Slay the Spire, 9 Hogwarts Legacy, and 10 Red Dead Redemption 2. So you can see just on this list there are a number of RPGs with Elden Ring, Baldur's Gate, Cyberpunk, Hogwarts Legacy, and arguably some other games if you consider them to be RPGs as well. I think that action-adventure games being the second most popular also makes sense, especially given how wide of an umbrella that really encompasses. But what I found interesting is that shooters were the third most popular genre here, both first-person shooters and third-person shooters. Now, I imagine this mostly consists of like Doom and stuff like that, but I do wonder what other shooters people are playing on their Steam Deck, how they're playing. I would love to know how many people are playing using trackpads or gyro or anything like that. But yeah, it's pretty cool to see shooters up here. Also surprising are platformers. I would expect actually that platformers are a little bit higher. Like, I would say that this handheld is perfect for platforming games. So yeah, like I said, I would expect this to be a little bit higher. For the most part, people are playing 4 to 7 hours a week on their Steam Deck. That sort of matches my playtime. It's about 30 to 60 minutes a night. But also, let's talk about emulation, because over half of Steam Deck users are emulating on the Steam Deck. And I've got to say, they have immaculate taste, because the PlayStation 2 is the first most emulated console, followed quickly by the Game Boy Advance, the Game Boy Color, the Game Boy, and the Nintendo GameCube, not to mention the Nintendo Switch. Now, again, this is a self-selected audience, but it's kind of wild to see that a third of the respondents are playing Nintendo Switch on the Steam Deck. That is certainly not going to make Nintendo happy. Speaking of Nintendo, of course, next after that is the NES and SNES, then the Nintendo 64, then PlayStation 1. And here, maybe I'm a little surprised by how many people are playing DS and 3DS games. Between the touchscreen and the trackpads, you would think that the Steam Deck is a really good system to emulate these handhelds, and it is, especially compared to other handhelds on the market. But honestly, every time I try to play one of those games, it never ends up feeling close enough to the original experience. And I'm not a stickler for recreating the authentic experience in most cases, but really with the DS and the 3DS, when I am playing one of those stylist touchpad games like Trauma Center or Kid Icarus, I have tried a number of ways to really make it work on the Steam Deck, and it just never gets there for me. So I am curious to know what you all think. Do you enjoy playing DS and 3DS games on the Steam Deck? Do you have problems like I do? What is your preferred way to play those games? Outside of that, I was surprised to find that 956 people are using in-house streaming like Moonlight, Steam Remote Play, or PlayStation Remote Play, and 520 people used off off-site streaming, so GeForce Now or Game Pass Cloud. Around 37% of folks are not using any other launcher other than Steam, but for the folks that are using another launcher, Heroic Launcher is by far the most popular, and for me it has been the easiest to use, so it's the one that I've recommended in the past. Oh, and I mentioned trackpads. Well, 55% of you folks are using trackpads to play video games, and the remainder of you are using trackpads to navigate desktop mode, which makes sense. So I think most people are happy with trackpads, and I am impressed that many people are using them to play games. That is pretty cool. And I think the last thing I'll talk about here is how many people are spending time on the Steam Deck versus other platforms. So of the respondents, almost all of them also had a PC or a Mac, and over half also had a Nintendo Switch. According to this graph, of the respondents, more people are generally spending time on the Steam Deck. What I found interesting was how many people are spending less than an hour on other platforms versus how many people are spending less than an hour on the Steam Deck. You know, a lot has been said about the Steam Deck being sort of a great secondary device, but the way I'm looking at this is that at least for the enthusiasts, the Steam Deck is the primary device, right? And I think that makes sense because a lot of us bought a Steam Deck because we don't necessarily have time to sit at a TV to play the PS5 or to play the Switch. We are playing on handhelds. And also, you know, if so many of the respondents are PC gamers primarily, then, you know, we bought the Steam Deck to break away from the desktop. And again, this is like the third or fourth time I'm saying this, but this is a self-selected audience, so these are enthusiasts, but I do find the results interesting nonetheless. Anyway, definitely check out the results of the survey for yourself. I did skip over a lot of things, and I think there's a lot of interesting stuff to look at, so take a look at that survey. The link is in the description. Let me know what you think. Were there any surprises for you, or was this all sort of in line with your expectations? Let me know. That gang out. Goodbye!